we have one very powerful, one very skilled friend. And I say it often. Thank God for Judicial Watch. Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch, founded in 1994. Judicial Watch, Inc. is a constitutionally conservative, nonpartisan educational foundation that promotes transparency, accountability, that the A word, and integrity in government, politics, and the law. Judicial Watch is perhaps the most active FOIA requester and litigator operating today. Mr. Fitton, welcome back.
Hey, good to be with you, Chris. Good to talk to you.
It is great to talk with you, sir, and I'm glad you're here. Judicial Watch filed a Supreme Court brief, federal law forbidding the counting of ballots received after Election Day. I believe Harmeet Dillon was also there in support of what you guys were doing. It seems rather stupid we have to have this debate that, no, you should not be counting ballots after Election Day, but you had to go to court for it. Explain the ins and outs of this.
Oh, it's even worse than you describe. It's ballots that arrive after Election Day that get counted. So,
Good
as
grief.
President Trump, he had issued an executive order supporting, interpreting the law that that the federal Election Day is the first, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it says. And ballots to come late or late. He said, and Trump said, it's like showing up at the polls 3 days later and asking to vote. It's not supposed to work that way. And it's changed radically in recent years to the extent where you have states that actually allow votes to come in up to 2 weeks after Election Day, as they do in Illinois and Mississippi. It's 5 days. California, it's 7 days. The long story short is we won in Mississippi. We got a Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling affirming that it's unlawful to count late ballots that arrive after Election Day. And Mississippi appealed it. So now we're trying to vindicate that ruling before the Supreme Court of the United States. And if the court rules the way we hope it does, it means that laws in at least 20 states, as much as 30, will be knocked out, and elections will be more honest, more legal. You won't have this incentive for voter fraud. They'll be complying with federal law, and voter confidence will increase.
How do the justices respond to the arguments presented by you? And I didn't speak out of school. Harmeet Dillon was there making the same argument, was she not?
Well, I think you're conflating two cases. So we had a case earlier that came down in our favor in January, because I mentioned that Illinois law. We sued on behalf of a congressman and two presidential electors, and the court said we didn't even have the right to sue. They didn't have standing to sue. And the court, in response, really made, I think, a decision, and the Justice Department agreed with Judicial Watch mostly on this. The justices of the Supreme Court, 7-2, found that candidates do have standing, and 5 of them found that they have inherent standing, just because, as a candidate, practically speaking, they necessarily should be able to challenge how ballots are counted and whether it's being done under law.
You think?
Big vindication for Trump, given what happened in 2020. Don't
right?
You agree?
The idea that a candidate who loses, quote unquote, loses an election has no standing to challenge the election is moronic. It's stupid.
Well, you don't even have to lose, Chris. It's just you're participating in it.
Exactly.
The idea that you think a rule is illegal and you can't challenge it because it may not impact the election, that's absurd.
It is.
And of course, the court agreed.
Something else you guys are working on that I've been watching a lot, and there's several dynamics to this.
Oh, so quickly, the hearing for the underlying issue is going to take place March 23rd. March
23rd. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's something else you guys have been working on, and this is, again, many aspects we've been paying attention to this in light of the massive illegal immigration issue that we have in this country, courtesy of Democrats and complicit Republicans. You sued the Transportation Department for cross-border trucking and licensing of illegal alien drivers. So you've got that component. These are truckers coming across the border and given access to our roadways. But there's also this component, and I'm going to ask you to put them together because I think it's part and parcel of states like New York and California issuing real IDs. And it's so blatant. One of them that was cited in New York was the first name on the license was no name given, and they thought that was a valid ID, a complete bastardization, I say, of the Real ID Act. So talk about both those aspects, your efforts and that particular aspect.
Well, the focus, as you say, is on this kind of this agreement that isn't a suicide pact related to cross border truckers, right? And then secondly, and tied into that as well, is the idea that commercial driver's licenses for truckers are being handed out with little care for the law to illegal aliens and people who shouldn't get them. And we've seen story after story. And, I was talking about this the other day to our supporters online. And I said, I don't want to go through the stories because they're just so horrible.
Yes.
Of these truckers who are not supposed to be licensed, killing motorists in accidents, and that are preventable in the sense that they shouldn't be driving the trucks to begin with. And if the government had acted properly, those people would be alive today.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's what the lawsuit's about. We basically want all the information about anything you might be concerned about in that regard. What's going on with Mexico, et cetera, and what about the safety and other issues that have been raised, given this, seemingly it's now almost every week there's a story, right?
Right.
An accident occurs where someone's killed as a result of illegal alien trucking.
Yeah, before I left Newsmax, I interviewed the father. His little girl was with him, and she has a lot of health problems. Their family was rear-ended by one of these illegal aliens who were irresponsibly, I say illegally, given CDLs.
Right.
And her life is irrevocably changed. Some people weren't as lucky to live, as you point out. Folks, we're talking to Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch. Something you guys are paying attention to that is kind of below my radar is the African Aid Agency. You guys are trying to get some records that you say were unlawfully removed. To tell me about this.
Well, it's one of these agencies that got into a fight with Doge initially. You may recall that they were kind of, the leadership was a little bit over the top and called the DC police when Doge showed up to gain access to the building.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
Well, it turns out the agency, according to whistleblowers that we've been helping, is corrupt as sin. And it looks like the evidence is that the people who may be corrupt were writing emails, separate and apart from the government systems in a way to disguise what they were doing. And, if you're writing emails about government work and it's not in the government system, there's a problem and it needs to be addressed. But in the meantime, there's been an admission by criminal activity related to the African Development Organization in federal court here in D.C., and who knows what else is coming. But it's all part of a coordinated effort that has directly led by a coordinated effort led by Judicial Watch, has directly led to a criminal admission.
Well,
so
what were they doing?
Hoping more is coming. We'll see.
What were they doing?
Well, think of having all sorts of unchecked money and then spending it all over the place and getting bribes and kickbacks, et cetera. That's what was going on.
Yeah.
Or giving money for entities that weren't doing anything and taking it, and funneling it to your friends. And
good grief.
It was what you would expect would happen when you give people monopoly money to play with no checks in place.
Yeah, your taxpayer dollars, folks.
Right.
We're talking with Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. Let me get into some other issues that have been on this show's radar screen, and just pick your brain on what your thoughts are on them. I think there's still a push among conservatives to get justice for the January 6th victims abused by the government, put in the gulags, denied their due process rights. There hasn't, in my mind anyway, been enough punishment meted out to those government officials who usurped and irresponsibly, and I say illegally, took away Americans' rights. Where are we on that, to your knowledge? And do you think it's a noble pursuit to continue to look at that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because the focus has been on the lawfare against President Trump, but it also involved his supporters, these January 6ers, many of whom were, in my view, targeted for improper reasons, not correct reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The argument is, well, someone was beating up a cop, so we prosecuted him. And, my contention is the whole process was corrupted, and there was no decision by the agency, the Justice Department or the FBI, that wasn't political in an improper way, targeting anything that went on January 6th. And do I think anyone's been looking at that in the way I'm describing? I don't think so. And but on the other hand, I don't think anything's being done, relatively speaking. I should say anything. Not much. Well, certainly nothing sufficient in light of what people's expectations were.
Well, yes,
that there be accountability for what went on with the lawfare, and kind of to close the loop on it. The January 6th prosecutions were lawfare. The targeting of Trump was lawfare.
Yes.
The targeting of Americans participating in disputing the election in the various states, that was lawfare, like what Fannie Willis is doing or was doing, and what is still going on in some states. And it's just, I don't know what the Justice Department's doing.
Yeah,
it's excuse after excuse, as best I can tell.
Yeah, and if you need to find the Attorney General these days, you got to go to a certain television network, and that's where you can find her 9 times out of 10. Let's discuss the SAVE Act. There's news and reporting out today that John Thune is relying on Mitch McConnell or whoever's running his office, because he doesn't seem to be in full command of his faculties. Is relying on Mitch McConnell's chairmanship of the particular committee of jurisdiction on the SAVE Act to not let it out of committee and not let it get to the floor, because there are Republicans who are committed to preserving Democrats' ability to cheat at the ballot box. Your thoughts on the intransigence of fake Republicans running the U.S. Senate and stopping the Save America Act from being voted on?
I didn't see that report. I'm suspicious of it because I think Thune probably wants to get a vote. I think the difference with conservatives on how the approach should be is, what is the process for resolving whether that SAVE Act passes? Mm-hmm. And the pushback from conservatives is there should be what's called a talking filibuster.
Correct.
Because the current rules, the way the filibuster works, and those of you who don't know, the filibuster is a rule that lets a senator speak, the debate continue more or less, and it's only stopped with, 60 votes. Well, they don't have to actually speak. So it's just like it's just like a fake filibuster.
Right. Zombie.
And so the goal is to have a talking filibuster, mm-hmm. and that's one way to make sure there's accountability, and maybe there will be a vote, an up or down vote, that gets the bill passed.
Well, I would hope so, but again, there seems to be delay after delay after delay, and I hear from the speaker that the leader Thune is committed to getting it an up or down vote on the Senate floor. 50+1 is all they would need, but my understanding, they've got the votes. They just need to make the Democrats filibuster. Last thing, and I just wanted your legal mind on this. You've got the Epstein.
I'm not a lawyer, but I'll give you my layman's understanding of it.
No, yeah, and you run an organization that focuses on justice, and and that's been the thrust of the Epstein files and the Epstein accountability. So you've got the narrative that has emerged over the last year and a half, that there really is no such thing as a client list per se. There really was no. There were no individuals in America it was all Jeffrey Epstein, and the 1,000 girls were all for Jeffrey Epstein and only Jeffrey Epstein. And then you got Prince Andrew being arrested, does that arrest kind of undermine that narrative that there was no such thing as clients of Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, I thought it was the Attorney General of the United States who said she had the client list on her desk or something like that. Didn't she say something? I don't want to misquote her.
I do recall that.
She strongly suggested there was such material.
Yes.
The argument of whether there's a client list is so absurd. What are we talking about? A list of people in one document? Maybe there's no such list. Is there material documenting and that you can compile a client list from?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there is and was. And the challenge for the Trump administration was the Justice Department and the FBI didn't know how to handle the documents, so they shut down inquiry, and there was a public uproar over it. And it turns out the public uproar was well-founded in the sense that the materials that have been released, and I think Trump is right, they vindicate him, but kind of document how he was in bed, and I don't use the pun lightly, with very powerful individuals, including the brother of the current king, in a way that suggested sexual misconduct among the parties and other criminal conduct, as you know, we're seeing with the arrest of the king's brother yesterday.
Right, and we're talking about Epstein, not Trump.
I think it's extraordinary. I didn't know what was going to be in it. I thought it was, I was thinking maybe they were going to be underwhelming. No, it's even worse than anyone could imagine.
Sure, and ironically, the Democrats thinking that Trump was somehow part of this, he ends up, a courtesy of these revelations, being the hero. He was the one that called the police. Kicked Epstein out of his club. He was the one that was calling cops, saying, "Really, you ought to look into this guy." And it was the president who was the hero here. Also, our hero, folks, Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch. These folks do so much great work. We are so proud of the work that they do here on the Chris Salcedo Show, and it's always great to catch up with you, my man.
Thank you, Chris. Good to talk to you again.